Today's video is brought to you by Paperlike, which makes writing or drawing on your iPad feel more like paper. Hey, it's Chris, and I didn't want this video to be like every other iPad review out there where somebody takes it out of the box and shows you a bunch of angles and just talks about using it. Instead, I wanted to get this device as involved in its own review as humanly possible. So this part of the video where I'm talking, that was filmed on the iPad Pro. The music that you hear in the background was composed on this iPad Pro. All the artwork that you see throughout this video, I drew on the iPad Pro. And of course, I had to edit some of this video on the iPad Pro as well. For my iPad Pro review, I chose to go with the base model, 64 gigs, Wi-Fi only, for a couple of reasons. Number one, I wanted to push the limits and then report back to you, was the screen too small? Was the storage enough? And number two, I also wanted to test the most portable iPad Pro. Needless to say, there's a lot to cover today. I'm gonna start with what I like, move on to what I don't like, which you're definitely gonna wanna stick around for. Then I'm gonna talk about some surprising things that I didn't even notice, and I'm gonna wrap up with some recommendations. Who should buy this and who shouldn't? I definitely like the redesigned body without the rounded edges. It's like an iPhone 4 or 5 morphed into a modern iPad, and I'm cool with it. I like that the bezels are evenly distributed all around this time because I didn't like the previous uneven look. And while I'm glad there's no notch, I will have more to say about the bezels when we get to the negatives. I really love the size of the 11-inch Pro. I've always liked Apple's 11-inch notebooks because they were so portable, and I feel right at home here. I appreciate that Apple fit a larger screen into the same body size as the 10.5-inch, although I really only am aware of the difference with the two sitting side by side. If you're an artist and you'll primarily be drawing or illustrating or painting on your Pro, you're probably gonna prefer the larger 12.9-inch, but I've done plenty of artwork on this 11-inch, and it hasn't let me down in the slightest. It actually makes me smile that Face ID has arrived on an iPad, mostly because it's so fast and convenient, and that's doubly true here with this iPad because I don't even have to take my hands off the keyboard to pay or log in. I love the ability to sit down and get straight to work thanks to the double tap on any of the keys to wake feature, and I also love that Face ID has worked really well for me in all orientations and at several different angles. It works just as well for me if I'm laying on the bed, as it does in my lap, as it does on my desk. The new Apple Pencil is pretty cool. It's the Apple Pencil that I wish had always existed, and it's not just because you can do this. The wireless charging and automatic pairing are obviously awesome, although I do get a bit worried that I might lose the pencil when I'm just walking around with my iPad. I know people's feelings are a little bit divided on the new matte finish on this Apple Pencil, but for me, it's a little easier to hold, it's less slippery, and somehow I just like using it better. Personally, I do like that new double tap shortcut, although I have had to train myself just a little bit to make sure that I'm not accidentally activating it. The new Pro keyboard is easier to fold this time around, which is a plus, but I do miss being able to just fold the keyboard out of the way to use it solely as a stand. And it's absolutely awesome that if you buy this new keyboard, it's also a full coverage case this year, so you don't have to make a separate purchase. On the performance side of things, the new version of the A12 chip doesn't even stutter. There wasn't a game or an app that I threw at it that even made it struggle. And when you buy something like this, it is a nice feeling to know that this is gonna feel fast for you for probably the next 4 years at least. So the storage. This base amount of storage, 64 gigs, is a little bit limiting, but maybe not quite as limiting as you might think. There's really nothing that you can't do in terms of apps that you wanna run, for instance, as long as you plan ahead. Because if you're doing creative work, then you might have to kind of pick one thing to work on at a time, maybe, depending on what you do. Like if I wanna edit a 4K video, which I did, obviously, then I might only be able to edit one big project at a time. If all you're gonna do though is surf the web and watch videos, it's not gonna be a big deal. If you wanna use this for gaming, then you might not be able to install every single game that you want all at once. One thing I did to optimize space immediately was to delete space-hogging apps that I knew I wasn't gonna use, like GarageBand, iMovie, Keynote, and Pages, and you might wanna do something similar if you do end up going with this base model. A lot of people seem to be kind of upset with iOS 12 on this device, and they feel like it's kind of limiting this powerful machine. I really feel like, for me, for 90% of what I do, it's really very usable. The other 10%, like little hacks and workarounds that desktop users might want to use to feel more at home, well, I'm hoping and optimistic that iOS 13 is gonna largely address. Still, I like the new iPhone X style gestures here. I think those are great. I love multitasking on this device as much as I ever have on an iPad, and I like the new variety of those colorful wallpapers. Something I want to mention is that I think this iPad Pro is probably the best device for augmented reality on the planet right now, thanks to the screen, the lightness, and the power. Okay, so now we're gonna get to the negatives, and while it might seem like I'm rattling off a lot, let it be known that I don't in any way think they outweigh the positives for me on this device. I think the biggest drawback on the iPad Pro right now, close to the launch, is the app situation, which rears its head in a few different ways. I think a lot of business people, and to some extent some creative people too, are finding that a lot of the web apps that they've come to rely on, that their workflow depends on, are dumbed down versions on the iPad. And the apps that are actually available as an alternative are not quite ideal replacements. There are certain jobs and workflows that if you rely on that one certain web app that won't work right on the iPad's browsers, then it may be kind of a deal killer, and you don't really know until you do. And then, of course, you still can't watch 4K YouTube content on the iPad, which kind of stinks because I create 4K content. I wish people could view it on the iPad, and I want to view it on the iPad. Still, content looks good. It's not like it looks bad, but I want my 4K. I think what's been most annoying for me this close to launch is that a lot of apps still aren't optimized, which means you end up with thick black bars around all the edges. So let's talk about battery life. The entire first week that I was using this device, I found myself wishing that the battery life was better. It's fine, it's okay, it's usable, but unlike my Apple Watch, which I don't mind charging every single night, this I wish I could get at least 2 days of use out of. For instance, after about 8 hours of use, I'll be down to about 25%, and there's no way I can go through the next day on that charge, which means there's another thing I have to remember to plug in, and if I don't, it's gonna impact my work the next day. And now, we're gonna get back to the design, which, as good as it looks, is not perfect. And remember, I said I was gonna get back to the bezels. Well, here it comes. These bezels are not, in any way whatsoever, by no stretch of the imagination, thin. I listened during the announcement and I searched the website as I was researching for this video, and I didn't see anywhere that Apple had upgraded the durability, which concerns me just a little bit because I had 2 models of the last version of the iPad Pro, and they both had a few issues. The bigger one, the 12.9 inch, had some distressing on the back of its metal case around the logo, which is not a big deal, but it didn't look very good. And on the front, it had a very small area with some dead pixels. And my old 10.5 inch iPad, on the other hand, I woke up one day and realized that it wasn't completely flat anymore. It was ever so slightly bent, and it just had a little curve to it, which you can see in some of the videos where it's sitting on my desk. Maybe they got kind of beat up from travel, I don't know, but I just want to caution you to be extra cautious and careful, but still, I wish that Apple could make these a little bit more durable. I mostly like the new USB-C port since it opens up a world of connectivity options, but I don't like that I can't connect external storage, and now my old convenient multi-charger no longer charges all my mobile Apple products. It charges everything but this. Let's talk about the keyboard again, and specifically the viewing angles, because I feel like there's really just one viewing angle. I feel like the back viewing angle is really just the replacement for last year's kickstand angle. And again, when you use it, you get stuck with the keyboard out front. You can't put it away. To be fair, there was this one coffee shop that had really high tables, and it was useful that one time. I'm never gonna use it there again. I really wish that there was infinite viewing angles. Also, when it's all put away, the keyboard cover / case, it just looks kind of plain. And honestly, I feel like it looks a little bit cheap too, which it obviously isn't. So it would be nice if it looked a little bit better somehow. There's only one thing that I don't like about the new Apple Pencil, and it's that it's not backwards compatible or vice versa. You can't use last year's Apple Pencil on the new iPad Pros either. And I know there's reasons. It's just kind of annoying. Let's talk about connectivity, LTE versus Wi-Fi. I got the base model, which is Wi-Fi only, and I regretted that almost instantly because the day or two after I got it, when I was working on this review, I lost internet. We had an internet outage. And so this would have been way more convenient. That $10 a month would be definitely worth it. Man, it's nice to have LTE. There's a few features I want to mention that really just slipped under the radar for me that I never even thought about. And they're not negatives, they're really just things that were implemented so well that I didn't even notice them. The first thing is the True Tone display. I never ever really notice it, and you wouldn't unless you were seeing it versus something else. The second thing is how thin and light this thing is, because it is thin and light all by itself, but I've always been using it with the keyboard cover / case, which obviously bulks it up a little bit. The third thing is just the high refresh rate on the screen. I mean, I don't notice it. I'm probably just used to it at this point. Again, Apple did a great job on it, but it's not what I'm sitting there thinking about as I'm using it. If you are looking for a new Pro, then check out today's sponsor, Paperlike, which is an accessory that makes it feel and sound like you're writing on real paper when you're using an Apple Pencil. Paperlike actually gives you more control when you're writing or drawing thanks to the Paperlike resistance that it offers, and yeah, it really makes a big difference. Plus, it reduces glare and fingerprints, which is awesome. Paperlike is great for anyone who uses apps like Notability or Procreate, and when you place an order, you'll get 2 Paperlike covers plus application accessories with free worldwide shipping and 100% satisfaction guarantee. The new version of Paperlike is available for pre-order now using the link down in the description. All right, recommendation time. Is this worth buying and for who? Well, I think it is worth buying for a lot of people, but not quite everybody. If you're gonna be using this for business, then it's either going to work great for you or you can make it work great for you, and I think that is the right way to put it right now, unless you have a web app that you depend on that just isn't fully supported or doesn't work quite right because of the browser situation. So basically, do your research. Students and travelers, I think, are gonna love this 11-inch. Artists, you can get by with an 11-inch if you need to. The 12.9-inch will be better for you, but in no way did the 11-inch prevent me from having a great time and producing great work. Photographers, I think, will especially love this. I think it is tailor-made for you and your workflow. Video editors, I think you really can love this, but it all comes down to the storage. The more storage, the better. And for you, you're probably gonna want that 1 terabyte if you can afford it. Music producers, this is a green light for you. I think you're gonna love it. If you wanna play games on this screen with all this power, then go for it, definitely. Finally, if you're looking at the base 64 gig Wi-Fi only model because you wanna save some money, then it's not gonna hold you back, really. You can do what you wanna do, you just have to think about it. You gotta be smart about it. Maybe you can't do everything all at once. Like maybe you can't install every game or every app that you want to use all at the same time without freeing up some space first. I think the perfect way to wrap this review up is to say that I never get tired of the feeling and the smile that I have coming out of an Apple store with a new iPad Pro in tow, and I've had them all since the very beginning. So stats and specs and thinking and overthinking aside, I think that should tell you a lot right there. If you want to follow me, I'm at Daily Tech, spelled Daily T-E-K-K, on Instagram and Twitter. I'll try to link up some cool accessories down below like I do from time to time, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Later.